What's up, everybody? Welcome to the AfterBuzz TV Fear the Walking Dead After Show for Season 2, Episode 1. I am so excited to break this down for you guys. I've been waiting since the press screening to watch this 2 weeks ago, and I cannot wait to talk to you about it. I've got a great panel. Let's get straight into it. Stick with us. We'll see you guys.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
What's up, everybody? Monster. The episode calls Monster, so we get Lady Gaga.
Actually let you do this.
We had to Gaga it in.
Yeah, it's pretty good. They always are like, what should we play for the episode? It's like, how often do you get it that easy? There's a Lady Gaga song called Monster. Yeah. I'm like hoping like there's like some episodes that are named after like 38 special songs or like things like that. You know?
Bringing them every day.
Yeah.
Shut Up and Dance With Me.
Yeah, maybe some Motley Crue or something. I don't know. Guys, welcome to the show. This is the AfterBuzz TV After Show for Fear the Walking Dead Season 2, Episode 1, titled Monster. We're back after 6 months off. There's so many exciting things to talk about.
Yes.
And we have a new panel. Well, kind of a new panel. It's half the old panel. We have the
Hello, strange little English fella.
Yeah.
Hello.
It's like Season 1, the remix.
Yeah.
You know, we're
Something
still
like
keeping
that.
it cool, keeping it
Probably you
lively.
brought me in for this season so you can kill me off.
Yeah, right.
At the break,
We'll
halfway through.
predict at the end of every episode which episode Simon gonna die. Which
Hey,
one's he gonna?
you know, almost dead Simon. Oh yeah, we know that guy.
Yeah, exactly. So guys, I'm Ben Bateman. You can find me at Ben Bateman Media on Twitter and Instagram. I'm gonna start at the end. Mr. Simon Thompson, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much
welcome.
indeed.
Woo!
That's a very warm welcome. You can find me on Twitter at ShowbizSimon. A name I gave myself, but I'm still not entirely convinced by it.
Are you kidding, man?
I feel like it sounds a little bit like a child's entertainer from the 90s, but I've got it now.
You're pure
so.
showbiz, man. Your accent makes you that much
Thank you.
more just like
Whatever
pro
pays
and
the
cool.
bills, it makes the money, man.
I know,
tell
right?
you.
Yeah.
Do what you gotta do.
One of these days, I'm gonna open a new show, like a season 1 of a show that I do this with just with an accent, and I'm just gonna see how long it is before the fans catch on that I in fact don't have that accent.
That could be really interesting.
But
actually.
I'm gonna see if I can make it happen.
Okay.
I'm gonna try to learn from
You
you.
know, it'd be interesting if you did a new accent every episode too, just to like keep people on their toes.
People would stop listening. I'm not that good at accents. Ashley Chatman, thank you for coming back.
Yes.
Welcome to the show. Where can the folks find you?
Hey guys, I'm on Twitter, Ashley_Chatman. Welcome back. I'm so glad to be back here for season number 2.
Yeah, so before we get into breaking down the episode, I should remind everybody that we are on iTunes, so please give us ratings and reviews. Keep us high in the standings. We provide free content. We want to continue to keep providing free content.
Yes.
And we can do that if you guys give us 5 stars, rating reviews on iTunes, and all that. Leave your thoughts and comments below. Of course, you can follow AfterBuzz TV on Twitter at AfterBuzz TV. And that should pretty much do that. So we should get into
And
the
we're in the
episode.
chat too.
And also, we do have live
Yes.
chat. I'm kind of the secretary here.
Yeah, you are.
Hello there.
You're the social media correspondent.
Yes.
So very, very busy already.
Yeah?
The 2 main topics of conversation are Strand
Of course.
He's awesome.
and Alicia.
Yep.
Yeah.
Got everybody talking.
Standard.
Perfect.
Alicia.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
a
And
fan
you guys are
favorite.
on
She's
I
kind
know.
of popular.
She's crazy popular. If anybody that I have met over the last few weeks is watching this, welcome to the show. This is exciting. I get to do a show because they all stopped watching The 100 because they hated the fact that she died on The 100.
Yeah.
And that was when I connected to this fan base, this Alicia fan base. So now, guys, you can watch a show with Alicia that I'm doing. This is so fun. I get to talk to you here on a show, and we're all on even ground about that. So let's start with the beginning of the episode.
Yeah.
We have the whole gang escaping the beach. That's
Yeah.
how we start things out. We have a pretty sweet zombie death.
Yeah.
Well, don't you think it would explode the motor, or like, I don't know, just it wouldn't be that easy?
I mean, I was just happy to see like some more action. This was the opening scene for the season, and you know, when you think of The Walking Dead, it's usually like that. There's some sort of explosive,
Right.
really violent zombie killings. So I actually liked it. I mean, of course, there's a lot about this show that you kind of just have to suspend your disbelief a little bit.
Of course.
But I mean, other than that, I thought it was a really great opening, cinematic, very cinematic feel this episode. So I liked it. Just all around.
Also, the degradation of the zombies that we see in Walking Dead, we're over 2 years later, so they're all so degraded now. We're super fresh, so all the zombies still kind of look like just newly dead people. So I was thinking a head that hadn't really fallen apart yet wouldn't have been as easy to just. But I don't know. I guess the blades are pretty strong.
You seem to know a lot, or have an alarming interest in human heads going into motorboats. But yeah, I mean, I think this is where the show is really going to have fun.
Yeah.
Because the first season, it took me a couple of watches to actually, fall in love with it.
Yeah.
It was a very different tone, and this one has come out of the gates
Yeah.
Both guns blazing, lots of action, and a lot of character development.
Yeah.
So I think they're really going to, especially in the first opening episodes of the season, really going to have fun with that. And I think the zombie deaths are going to be something that I think are going to be a key part of that. There already appears to be much more interaction between the humans and the walkers, which I think is something actually really fun for them to explore. I think it's a good move.
But to your note with that, I think that it's interesting now to see sort of different zombie deaths, because we've seen so many different zombie deaths. So it's kind of like, okay, what's really new? But for that, like, that was pretty different, like something I hadn't seen in The Walking Dead in a while. So I think with this, hopefully they'll kind of just explore, I mean, as morbid as it sounds, we'll kind of explore some different zombie deaths in some ways that, you know, since these are fresher zombies, some ways that they can kind of, you know, kill them off, hacky-sacky.
Well, yeah, it is definitely very interesting that we're starting. This show's starting from where it started, as obviously, I think a show that everybody knew was going to be very successful.
Yeah.
They greenlit the second season, I believe, before the first season had even aired.
Yeah.
They knew they were going to go 6 and 16. 6 and 16, I believe, right?
Yeah.
6 and 15? And so what you get is an enormous amount of budget that's thrown at the show. That in The Walking Dead season 2, a lot of the reason they stretched it out so long without the zombies was because they didn't have the budget for it. They weren't willing to spend the money yet. So now that they know this, they know they're going to get the rope for 2, 3, 4 seasons. The way they approach everything is going to be very different than we saw with the first Walking Dead show.
Yeah.
And to your point about sort of character development in this episode, like, we did really see a lot, and they're really setting us up, I think, for the long game with a lot of these characters, because in that first show, you know, and we're going to do something at the end of the episode, guys, something called Carol Watch. Anybody who's a fan of The Walking Dead knows how much of a fan favorite character Carol has become, how much of just a complete badass she is, and went from obviously a very sort of meek character to just straight up Rambo. Is just the most, like, presence.
Totally agree.
And so I think it's very interesting to know, I was telling you guys this, that I was able to speak to Gail Ann Hurd, who is the executive producer on the show, about Carol and how special of a character she is and who that Carol is going to be. And she sort of made the point to me that we didn't know what we had until season 3 with her.
Yeah.
We didn't, because it hadn't developed that way. We didn't know we were going to get the rope. And so now it's like, you know, 6 seasons in, of course, we've had all this time to make this character what she is. But I think going into this show, they have to have in their mind a little bit, who's that going to be? Who are we going to take from point A to point B and have this complete transformation? So at the end of the episode, we're all going to sound off with Carol Watch, who we think it's going to be. And every episode, we're going to revisit this to see sort of where we're at, where everybody thinks we're at. And anybody on the chat wants to share their opinions there.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on that.
I think Simon might be the Carol Watch for this series. Yeah.
Thanks. Oh God, I can feel the sword of
gonna
Damocles already over my
elevate
head.
from the secretary in the chat to
The
somebody
secretary
else.
always dies. It'll be my last day on the job before I go for retirement, and I'm about to have a baby. Blum,
know,
blum,
right?
blum, instantly dead. But yeah, no, you're right about the show and moving it forward, because I went to the launch a couple of weeks ago, and I put a piece up on Forbes on Friday. I'll put a link to it in the YouTube channel after the show. And got to chat with Dave Alpert, Dave Erickson, and Robert Kirkman, obviously the 3 guys behind the show. And they were saying, because we talked about budgets, and the budget has gone up, not just because it's gone to 15 episodes, but the fact that they were kind of like, okay, what they learned from the first season was the fact that it was a different pace, it was very slow, but they wanted to do that to set themselves apart from Walking Dead.
Of course.
But now they're kind of going, okay, aside from the fact that filming on the water is really bloody expensive, and there's a lot of things that come with that, they were just like, actually, we do want to have more fun with these things, and they're already mapping out season 3. So they're kind of going, okay, well, we need this amount of money to make this happen, which will then pay off further down the road. So it is a case of, you know, they are investing, and, you know, for the network to not invest would have been, you know, a bit foolhardy, to be honest with you, because they've got to go big, and the tone is going to shift, but I don't think it's going to lose that that sort of intimacy that I think this has, that perhaps The Walking Dead doesn't have.
Yeah, and just thinking even bigger than budget, I'm really looking forward to, because since we've been talking about, you know, for The Walking Dead, they didn't realize what they had as far as character development. And a lot of the characters that are in The Walking Dead, you know, they weren't originally supposed to have lasted for as long as they did, but because of the fan base, they sort of kept them around.
Carol specifically.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm really interested to see, learning from those experiences, how the writing in this show is going to be a lot different, and how they're going to sort of think out the characters' progressions. You know, how they're going to have them make certain choices, and how that's going to fit into the full scheme of the characters and the full scheme of the show. So I'm really excited about the writing this season.
Well, they're able to do that, of course, partly because with The Walking Dead, the comic books are already out there.
Exactly.
But with this, they're kind of like going, okay, we've got effectively, in comparison, a blank sheet of paper. Let's draw literally and figurative these characters in the way that we want to do that, which is good. So
I wonder if Dave Erickson and his background in Sons of Anarchy, and then Kirkman, and just in his massive experience of writing all these comics and doing an entire first show. I kind of wonder what the show is going to end up feeling like. I wonder if it will reflect Sons a little bit, that tone, or I wonder if Kirkman is very, if it's going to start, it's going to feel more like a Robert Kirkman comic book that we just don't know we're reading. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm curious to see. I'm very curious to see.
I mean, either of those outcomes I think will be really entertaining and very interesting.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, well, we would like to be excellent or excellent.
Excellent.
I'll go with excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so they escape the beach. There's some pretty sweet zombie killing on the beach. They're definitely not refined zombie killers yet.
No.
They're definitely, there's like the rock move, and there's like, they're just kind of getting there. They haven't really, refined their approach yet, but they'll get there.
They're getting there.
We get on the boat, and now enter Strand. Just like the coolest. Like Strand is, and Strand was upgraded from season 1. He was supposed to be like a minor character, and they obviously upgraded him in season 2 because he was just such a fan favorite.
Yeah.
But he is just a stone cold badass and so well dressed.
Yeah.
So well dressed.
Also ridiculously handsome.
Yeah.
I think I have a bit of a man crush.
Yeah.
Oh, you're blushing.
Well, no, I do. OMG. No, I do, because he's just, as you say, he's a badass, and you know that, well, you hope that his intentions are the right intentions.
Yeah.
But there's also an edge of him being just a bit of a dick.
He's a little evil.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, you don't want to cross him, but you're not entirely sure that you want to get into bed with him. Because you're kind of like, you just don't know what his intentions are, and I find that really, really interesting and really intriguing.
Why do you think he had his bags packed, everything ready to go before they got back to the house? Why do you think that is? I mean, they reference it in the show, and it's a thought, and it's a valid question. He seemed like he was ready to take off, but he has an ungodly amount of money, it seems like. And we know very little about him. He's so mysterious.
Well, also, I mean, there is the fact that he obviously had his stuff packed before everyone else, to make the go. We've obviously heard him, Maddie overheard him having a conversation and talking in Spanish, which he then basically kind of fobbed off as like, well, because I'm gifted, I talk to people, that's kind of what you do. He was talking about, later in the episode, about sounds on water and stuff like that, and he was expecting someone to be in the vicinity when the radar went off. I think he's going somewhere to do something. But whether that's at the expense of everyone else or whether that's just part of the story, I'm not quite sure. I would like to think that he's just being made to look bad, but in fact is doing it for a good reason.
Right.
Because if he's doing it for the other, I think it's going to go batshit crazy quite quickly.
I think he would be too obvious of a guy to take in a villainous direction.
Yeah.
He's also too good of kind of an anti-hero in a lot of ways right now for just to make him pure evil. I love his relationship to Frank DeLance and to Nick. I think it's such a well-written relationship, and for them, they conceptualized it obviously early in the prison in season 1, but for them to talk in this way, there's that great conversation they're having later, and he's just like, he says, why are you here? And he's like, you mean on this boat or here existentially? And he's like, either. It's like, they're just so funny. Like, they're such an odd couple, those two.
I think they kind of, obviously they're both searching for something in very different ways. Strand is doing it because there is an objective which he's heading towards. But I think, Chris is just looking for something, looking for a reason, whatever that reason is.
You mean Nick?
Yeah, Nick. Sorry. He's just looking for something, and he doesn't quite know what that is. Whether that's a emotional something, a physical something, a place to belong, or a place, as in a group of people to belong. And I think he's really just the clarity that he's got now. I think he's kind of like going, well, I've got this clarity, but where am I going to direct my energies, and where do I fit in to this group? And, obviously you have a firm leader in The Walking Dead, but here it's kind of like everyone's trying to work out who the new leader is going to be. It reminded me a little bit of, like the TV show Big Brother, where everybody goes into the house on the first day and everyone's like, hey, let's all be friends, blah, blah, blah. There's a little bit of that at the moment because they've all been shoved on this boat together. They didn't intend to be there as that group. It's very much that beginning of the dynamic, and I think they're just trying to feel each other out. And it's a case of, with both of them, deciding, who's the leader, what is the relationship? Is it kind of like a drug pusher, drug taker kind of relationship?
Right.
Is he looking for something paternal? I don't know.
I mean, my favorite scene in this entire episode was I have my 2 rules. This is my boat. This is my boat. In case you missed it, this is my goddamn boat.
In case there's any confusion about rule number 2, it's my goddamn boat.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to just seeing how his character plays into all of this. I know it would be kind of the obvious route for him to be villainous. I don't think that he'll necessarily. He reminds me a lot, in some cases, of like an early Daryl in The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Where,
Good call.
You know, you didn't know exactly which way he was going to turn. You know, he had his brother Merle, and it was just a lot of murkiness going on there. So with this character, but I like that. I mean, obviously, as a character in the show, it doesn't help them to not really know whether or not they can trust him. But for as a audience person, somebody viewing it, it's really, really interesting to watch. And yeah, I mean, I'm definitely curious as to why he had all of his stuff ready to go, like kind of how he knows, and he just has kind of like a sixth sense about a lot of stuff.
Well, actually, someone in the chat room, TN Hand 1022, has said maybe the boat in the house actually didn't even belong to him.
I kind of had that similar thought.
So
yeah, because at the very end, and not to skip too far ahead, but when Nick pulls out that yacht club book, I don't even think that they referenced it anymore after he pulled it out. I was thinking like, okay, it was going to show that maybe the boat had belonged to somebody else and he'd stolen it. So I mean, but either way,
could be the person the person or persons that's pursuing them.
Of course,
could be, yeah.
But at the same time, you know, he's helped them so far. Like he seems on the up and up. It would seem really weird for him to have saved them, brought them to the house, take them on the boat, for him to just kill him, you know, like it. There has to be something else there.
Well, see that he's a badass, but
he is,
does. There is a softness to him as well.
Well, his scenes with Nick really prove that.
Of course,
it's so funny that like I was talking about this, I think before we went live, but just when they cast The Walking Dead, when they cast that first show, the show had legs, and they knew that it was a good idea because the comic had been tremendously successful, and Darabont had been developing the concept forever. But the guys they cast in that show really, like, they weren't really anybody's. Like I mean, everybody remembers from Love Actually, Andrew Lincoln. You know, he's got a famous scene that we all love, and John Barenthal had been 1 or 2 things here and there. But most of the cast of season 1 of that show was
kind
just
of unknowns.
Or people, they were character actors you'd seen here and there. Like the guys in this show, I mean, Cliff Curtis is just a stud. The guy's been amazing in 100 things. Kim Dickens is like TV royalty. She's been in like 4 of my favorite shows. I mean, Coleman Domingo, you know what his credits the last few years are? Selma, 12 Years a Slave, The Butler, like incredible Oscar-nominated movies. These guys got picked, like really plucked for these roles. And so I think it's very, very cool to see. You know, when I was talking to Coleman, I asked him what he auditioned with, and he auditioned with that cold open from, I think, episode 4, season 1. You know, the one where he's sitting there and he gives that long monologue. He's talking to that guy who's just like, it's really, really dark, I'm pretty sure, but it's a straight like 4 pages of dialogue. And I just love that we're graced with the actors that have this level of talent to be able to take that sort of thing and just run with it.
But also to the level of you know their success and you know their caliber, but they don't come with a lot of baggage from too many other shows.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You know, you've seen that they can already do it, but they're really bringing it. Interesting points on Strand, actually. Strand is a pimp, definitely his boat. Morgan Freeman voice. What else can you ask for? Strand had to set them straight just in case that they thought they were running things, which is the point you made about the rules on the boat. And it says about this is from Vicky in the chat room, about Strand not owning the boat. In one of the sneak peeks in the next episode, he said, "This boat" instead of "my boat," and Salazar points it out. So that's a really good point. So that kind of backs up one of the theories that we were talking about there.
I do love that. One of my favorite things about Strand's character is like he seems to be totally comfortable in this world, in this like cutthroat world of turning on everybody. I mean, his willingness to leave these people behind and leverage things at to his advantage early on it was immediate. From the second you meet the guy, he's making deals. But I also love he's sitting on this amazing yacht. And he looks like he's dressed like a freaking Gucci model, and he's sitting there drinking like an espresso that he's made with like his like French espresso maker, of course, on his boat.
Of course.
And he's just acting like life's fine. I'm on my yacht. Like, yeah, I've saved these people, but we're you know, he's just like he seems so in his element.
Just so suave and like, you know, almost like one of those, you know, Dos Equis commercials.
Yeah.
You know? Like, I don't always save people on my boat, but when I do, I'm doing it with an espresso.
He should be the new Dos Equis guy, because that guy's retiring. He'd be amazing.
Nice.
We said it here first, guys.
I think we just got him a new job.
Get him a job, and we want
15%. 15?
Okay.
Come on, 15.
Those of you in the chat who are on Twitter, tweet Coleman Domingo. I think it's like @Coleman_Domingo.
Yeah.
Look it up. You'll find it right away. Tweet him and let him know that AfterBuzz TV thinks he should be the new voice of Dos Equis. I will be doing it as soon as the show is over. That's a great idea.
It is.
All right, let's move a little bit into Jack on the radio.
Yes.
So this is a great plot point.
Yeah.
So we start talking about Alicia Debnam-Carey here, who, she's being set up to be the very young, very naive younger sister.
Yeah.
And it's a little frustrating that they would make the female character be the sort of like naive or dumb one to make this decision. That they would, instead of making Chris, who seems like just as clueless, but I guess he's going through his own stuff. Yeah. So they're giving him his own piece. But what I do think is awesome about her, I don't get the feeling from Chris that he's gonna last. Like for my feeling is like Chris would get killed off first. I get a feeling with her character, they're really gonna develop her character. Like I think they're gonna really grow her, and I think that this mistake she just made of giving out their coordinates to this guy Jack on the radio, who very clearly was working her, right?
Yeah.
Very clearly, like from the beginning, knew
Very
exactly
much
what was going on. I think this mistake's gonna teach her something.
Yeah.
Somebody might get hurt because of it, and I think she might sort of like ice up and become,
Well, sorry, no, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying that, I agree, and maybe it's just because this particular episode they highlighted her sort of stupid mistake, and that's maybe why we feel sort of that way. Like, hope she doesn't become that character. But I feel like all of it's teenagers, it's young people who they're in this situation already that's chaotic and confusing, so they're gonna make stupid mistakes. And as we've seen with Nick from the first season, he was nothing but stupid mistakes, pretty much. So I don't know if necessarily she'll be sort of the highlighted, kaputt's girl for a while. But at the same time, I couldn't be too mad with her because there's a point of her humanity that's also in there,
Yeah.
like with her and Madison, we really see just them really trying to like hold on to being human beings and having compassion and trying to be sensitive and empathetic to other people that are in trouble, that need help, and with everything that's going on, I kind of like that quality, and I hope that she doesn't lose that just completely. I hope that it remains there, but she just develops a little bit more, just develops a little, just to a point where she can just think better a lot more and use her brain a little bit more and just be more mindful and like more wise about the situation she gets herself in.
Let me ask you guys, usually with these types of shows, these gigantic sort of like post-apocalyptic or melodrama shows where everything is kind of crumbling, you have a moral centerpiece, like a focal point, like protagonist. So Jack in Lost or Rick in The Walking Dead. And the show kind of centers around their leadership role right up until the point they break. They're questioned and they change. And that's when the show usually gets really interesting. Yeah. So the question I have is, whose show is this? Is this Madison or is it Travis? Is it Cliff Curtis or Kim Dickens?
For me, I would say it's going to be Maddie.
Feels like it's going there.
Yeah.
That's what he told me, because I talked to him. Like I said, Cliff, you're that guy. And he said, no, it's not my show. It's Kim's show.
Yeah.
And I told her that, and she laughed, and she thought it was funny, but I would be inclined to agree with you.
Yeah.
At first, it seemed like it was going to be Travis's show, but I think Liza's death is that thing that broke him a little, and it's too early to break his character.
Yeah.
I think Kim she seems to be getting it more than him.
She's the one that's challenging. I mean, especially again when it comes to Strand, not to sort of make the show all about him as a character, but she's the one that's challenging. And then it's the men that are kind of following through, and they're the physical doers.
Yeah.
But she's the one that's really. I think the only other person I think that potentially could be the leader, but I don't think he will be, is Salazar, is Ruben Blades' character.
Yeah, he's great.
Because he is. You can see him, especially with people like Strand, really analysing the calls that they're making and the effect on other people and how much of the decisions that they're making and suggestions they're making are for their own personal benefit and how much is for the good of the group. So I think it's one of those two, and I think that's a good thing, because I think to have the man as the leader, I think would make it too much like other shows, including The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
And the women in The Walking Dead are great, but you're really spoilt for really interesting, strong women in this show. It's a fairly equal split on the boat right now. And it appears to be the women that are really coming with the ideas and to start the conversations, and the guys are the doers.
Yeah.
And holding it together too.
Yeah.
With everything.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting scene when when Strand says to Travis, "What are you gonna do, Travis? You feeling strong?" And you're like, "Oh, wow, he's getting a little in his face a little bit."
Yeah.
And I don't think Travis would stand up to him and get in his face physically. That doesn't feel like Travis's character.
No.
Not at all.
I think that there is there's more chance of Salazar standing up.
He's much
you
more.
know.
Yeah, he's definitely the guy that's willing to get his hands dirty.
I mean, even with the whole confrontation with Nick, and I mean, with Chris, you know, where Chris punches him.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, like with that, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I get this is his son, and he was grieving and everything, but yeah, I get the kind of feeling that. I mean, and I thought that there would be more of a transition, like towards the end of season 1, because Travis seemed to be more sympathetic, and he seemed to have, you know, more of that like humanistic viewpoint and perspective, and like, no, let's help people, and let's, you know, we can't kill and we can't. But now it seems like it's switching, but it also it doesn't feel like it's going to develop to a point where he's like Rick, or even where he's like any of the other male characters in The Walking Dead.
Well, it was really interesting with that slap scene, because it's two men, father and son, and you don't. When it happened, neither of them knew how to deal with it.
Yeah.
They were both. I mean, the slapper was kind of like, oh shit! I didn't actually. I thought to do it, but I didn't physically mean to do it.
It was
And
a
then
punch,
obviously,
too. It wasn't a
yeah.
slap.
And he was just like, and then Dad was like, yeah, I didn't see that in you, or I didn't see that coming, and neither of them knew how to handle that. So he just walked away.
My mother would have known what to do.
Yeah.
Let's just be real.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she would have been. I never would have got. That's TV for you right there. But yeah.
So Alicia's entire arc in this episode. Do you think she realizes how badly she screwed up yet?
I think so. But again, I feel like she's coming from a place of just wanting to help.
Right.
And she has that very like loving, very caring. Like we see those characteristics in her all throughout season 1, with her really trying to take care of Nick. And so she is a caretaker. Like she has that in her, which is, like I said, they're great qualities to have, but in this new world, you kind of have to be very selective, and you have to be smart, because it's not just you that's at risk. I mean, your entire family, everybody that you love, they're at risk as well. So, you know, it's like, it's stupid, but at the same time, I don't, at least right now, I feel like it's too soon for her to just completely lose that. If it ever happens, I feel like it should develop into something else. But I like that characteristic that she has. It's very reminiscent of Madison, and you know,
she didn't kill anybody at the beginning of this episode, right? Any walkers?
I don't think so.
She still hasn't killed a walker yet.
Yeah.
From what I can gather. So that'll definitely be a moment.
She's still searching for the good in every situation. I think there's that sort of, as you say, nurturing hope that you think it's all going to be okay. One thing I found really effective about the talking with Jack on the radio was it reminded me of two films, The Fog.
Never watched it.
Brilliant. And a horror movie called Pontypool. Set in Canada. There's a zombie outbreak outside, and there's a guy who stays on air on a radio station. It's absolutely fantastic. I think it's on Netflix if anybody wants to check it out. Pontypool. Pontypool. And it very much reminded me of that. And I thought the use of the song David Bowie's 5 Years, I thought was absolutely first class. But the music in this season so far has been absolutely spot on.
There was
at the beginning, right off the bat, with the scenes on the beach. The music from that kind of reminded me of John Carpenter's movies, the music from Risky Business, kind of Tangerine Dream kind of thing, and also an element of Tron. And I think
ambient, synthy.
And they appear to be already in the way that The Walking Dead doesn't do this, of almost having the music as a character or part of the storyline.
That Tangerine Dream stuff you're talking about from Risky Business. Love on a Real Train's obviously like one of the all-time sort of characters in a scene as far as music goes. And I definitely noticed that. I made a note of how rad the music was in the last quarter of the show. It's just there's just a tone. There's a tone to a lot of the scenes in this show that I'm just like, it's that feeling when you're watching it. It's kind of a fist pump. You're like, this just feels so awesome. It just feels good.
And that combined, I feel, with the way that they shot a lot of the scenes too. You know, like I feel like the style of this filming is very, very different. Slower pace in some cases, but it's also there's something really beautiful about it, you know?
The scene in the water with the zombies was oddly beautiful.
Yeah, really well shot. So before we have like the Last Supper, so to speak, there is this funeral. And it's this sort of awkward, weird, like, Travis is delivering a speech, and it's completely the classic trying to say all the good things you can about somebody who's just passed away, which is not to say that it's the wrong thing. It's just that we've seen it in film, and if any of us are unlucky enough to have lost someone in real life, have experienced that in real life enough so many times that when you're seeing it in this show, it's like also a funny moment as a zombie show fan when you realize this type of thing is never going to happen. Like we saw funerals early on in Walking Dead, but you just funerals
after a while,
funerals just stop happening because everybody dies, and it's just there's just no time. There's no time to put somebody in a. There's just no time for that. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And there's no time to process it either. You know?
Yeah, you become very numb. So I think it's interesting what they're doing with Chris's character. He right now has the Carl effect on me, where you're just like, I'm just annoyed when you're on screen, but it's intentional. It's not he's not doing a bad job with it. It's that's what they're trying to do with the character, but Carl stayed that way for a long time before some people would still say he does.
Well, I'm not a massive fan of that character. Yeah. He bugs me.
Yeah, but he's come around. I mean, he's a better character now than he was. And it's amazing. The other day I actually looked at a shot, just like a picture of him from the first season. I couldn't believe how much older he looks. Yeah. It's crazy. I know. It's crazy. But I thought that funeral scene was definitely pretty interesting. Travis kind of gives his she was so nice, she was so strong, she was so sweet, and then it's just over, and Chris kicks her overboard.
But then it's kind of like, well, what else? What are you supposed to say? Right what do you do? And the whole situation, just the way that it happened, and I think even though he knows that it was the right thing to do, Travis, he knows that it was the right thing to do to end her. He probably still has a little bit of remorse and guilt for it because he didn't get a chance to let Chris say goodbye. Yep. There was no real resolve, no real tie it up with the bow. Which either way there wouldn't be that. I mean, like Daniel was saying, there it wouldn't have mattered either way.
Yeah, right.
But I don't know. I feel like I don't know where they're exactly trying to go with Chris's character. He seems like he's a little flip-floppy, like with Madison. He seems to be more cool and understanding about it, even when she was saying, look, I would have done the same thing, type of thing. So I hope that they take his character in a different direction, but I think the funeral scene, like, it just kind of shows that he feels like he's really out of control within everything. And he's maybe not having as much of a voice as the other characters are, in a sense. And this is just him kind of lashing out and saying, like, hey, I'm here, I matter,
Something I'm getting from his character as far as confusion goes, because I think there's a lot of feels going on there, and I think he doesn't feel things that he thinks that he should feel, and I think some of his anger comes from the fact that he's kind of pissed off with himself, because you think you should feel a certain way about somebody dying, and you have to then obviously in this situation embrace the inevitability that you got to kill them or they're going to kill you, and it's kind of like you don't want to rationalize that and think, okay, that's the right thing to do, because your mum's dead. It's you don't want to be okay with that, and I think that's where his struggle is coming from. And I think with the funeral scene, he just wanted to either have her with him physically, or just get her the hell away. So it's kind of like ripping off that Band-Aid, and either I keep my mum and she's just going to rot, or we put her in the water, but let's not prolong that process any longer, because it must be really, really mentally very difficult for his character to deal with that.
I mean, there's definitely two things going on. There's one is we're dealing with a teenager. We often forget this on shows when you're dealing with casts that there's a lot of CW shows that deal with teenage characters and they're put in adult situations. You forget this. You forget that it is a teenage character. So there's a certain amount of teenage angst that's going to go along with this character. Also, a teenage character who just lost their mom.
Of course.
So it's those two things. I mean, that's completely understandable that he would lash out and be emotionally unbalanced. What did we think about his scene with Ruben Blades, with the two of them fishing? That was interesting. We had two things. There's actually a lot of different character relationships with the same characters that we had in season 1, but interacting with each other for sort of the first time. So those two having their fishing scene. You had that weird scene with Nick and Ophelia when they were passing each other. Like, is there like a romance thing happening here? I don't even know what's going on.
And Ophelia, I'm like, okay, she said like 3 words this episode, so I hope that she's not just going to be like one of those characters that.
I don't think she will. Well, and then Chris and Alicia in the first season. I felt like wrapped up the season with kind of a moment.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the season, they had like that moment in the house together.
A weird moment too.
They didn't interact in this episode once. So I thought that was all. They were setting the stage for a bunch of weird stuff. None of those relationships really were explored in the first season at all.
Yeah.
Should we go over them just quickly one at a time?
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, I think for Alicia and Chris, I mean, he's dealing with the death of his mom, so I feel like for her, she's just kind of like, okay, well, let me just stay out of the way type of thing. But yeah, that was really interesting. I hope that it's not. Because with this, I just don't want a lot of cliches for this show. Like, I really want it to be... I want to be surprised. I want there to be a lot of twists and turns as best as we can, because we know, obviously, we kind of know in some aspects where they're going to go with certain things, with certain characters. But I want to have that element of surprise there as much as possible. So I feel like it'd be kind of cliche for like the romance to sort of start with Ophelia and with Nick. But I mean, at the same time, like it could add something extra.
There's only
to the
so
show.
many men and so many women on the boat.
Exactly.
I will say this though about Chris and Alicia, because you guys made fun of me because last season I was the only one who liked that scene. I was the only one. I was the only one. I was the only one who was like, I wouldn't mind it. I asked Dave Erickson straight up, are we gonna see some Alicia and Chris romance? And he said, no. He unabashedly didn't beat around the bush.
Sorry, Chris, you've been cock blocked.
He just shut it down. So that is not happening. Confirmed by the showrunner.
Yeah.
But what about the Ophelia relationship? What do you think, Simon? The Ophelia-Nick relationship, was that just a weird scene? Was that just establishing that...
Yeah, I think there's... here's where I think that is going. I think there's an awkwardness by the fact that I think they are intrigued by each other, whether that's romantically or anything else. I think what is going to come into play, and I think I might be getting ahead of myself, but the character Jack from the radio...
Yeah.
What I see kind of coming into play here is the fact that if he comes over, obviously he's already got one of the girls on side, tries to get the second girl on side, but actually there's some sort of romantic interest there with her. And so that's where he's going to come in and kind of, force his position as one of the males on the boat. Because there's this unspoken, whether it's, as I say, romantic connection or not,
right.
I think there's something where he will be her knight in shining armor at some point, or vice versa. There's nothing to say that she couldn't save his ass from any situation, because she can. But I think she doesn't quite know... I think because of his history, she doesn't quite trust him.
Yeah.
She finds he might be potentially very unreliable.
He definitely is.
Because he's obviously, he can crumble.
Yeah.
He's shown that before. And I think she's probably nervous about putting, too much faith or relying on him too much at this point until he's done something to prove. And I think that, with bringing Jack in, or whoever else is on the boat that's nearby, I think that's where that's really going to come into play, and they're going to kind of know then where each other stands.
What's the age difference, do you think? How old?
Only a couple of years, I think. Not much. I'd say two years.
You think Nick is supposed to be like 18-ish?
Yeah, probably.
18, 19, and she's supposed to be like 23?
Yeah.
Maybe like in her mid-20s.
Yeah. I would say he's maybe a bit older, sort of 19, 20, I think, perhaps.
Anybody in the chat knows this? I feel like that's something we actually probably are supposed to remember.
That would be great. One thing interesting, though, is Chris and Salazar equals Glenn and Dale. You were just talking about Salazar having the conversation. Very good comparison there. I'll look at the results there.
But just to really quickly wrap up on that point, I think relationships, this is kind of going to be the beginning of sort of what happens when there's an apocalypse and there's very few people who are alive. And so it's not necessarily about like, oh, who do I have more of a romantic connection with? I think it's going to be like the relationships, or at least the romantic relationships, it's going to be kind of based on like who's here and who was there at that time when I had a moment and you and I had a moment, and let's just kind of see like what the hell, like let's go for it, because I mean, how many other people are there alive? So, and that's that kind of the feeling that I got from like towards this last season of The Walking Dead, just kind of relationships sort of forming, not necessarily because it was something brewing, but just because it was two people in a place at a time and something just happened. So I feel like that sporadic, feeling is probably going to take off with a lot of the teenage relationships.
Got some response in the chat room.
Yes.
Okay, this is what we're looking at the moment. Stepbro #sis. Alicia and Chris are siblings. That's it. Alicia seems the type to go for someone a bit older. Chris is a year younger than her. Alicia likes thinky artists. Alicia needs a sword and dagger. She should have kept them from the 100.
Yes.
That's coming from Taylor Harris.
No
But
word
thanks,
on
Taylor.
Ophelia?
But nothing on the ages.
Nothing on the ages.
Okay. Let's chat a little bit about this pirate situation, because I do want to make sure we cover that before the episode wraps up. So a couple of interesting things here. Chris goes swimming, and Nick runs after him, and it's like this awkward thing. We see zombies in the water, so that's the first time we've seen floating zombies in The Walking Dead. But then Chris has this weird moment. I'm sorry, not Chris. Nick has this weird moment where he says, "I hear someone," and you're like, "Who cares?
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean you hear?" But it was just a weird moment. He tunes out. Swims into like an underwater compartment in a sinking, broken ship. And he encounters a walker, but after the walker lunges at him and he kicks him away, the walker seems to be confused and he doesn't know what's going on. So are we sort of to believe that like water and the sense of smell is what prevents the zombie from being able to see you? I was curious what was going on there. Did you guys know?
I mean, there were a lot of walkers that were still trying to come after him in the water, but I see what you're saying. I don't know if that necessarily is going to be, that'd be interesting, but at the same time, it's like they're surrounded by water, so it would take less away of the threat of walkers trying to attack them.
Or is it because obviously, they did interact in the water, it might be the fact that if there's the movement of the water, basically distracts from the movement of the physical human, so they can't tell whether it's a human that's moving or whether it's the water that's lapping against the boat. They can't make some sort of distinction between the two. It's not like they're dolphins,
right?
I think that might be it as well. But I like the fact that he went under the boat, and they're using something they used in The Walking Dead a lot was the holes with the light shining through.
Yeah, it's a cool way to like to see.
And obviously the bullet holes are a key point here because somebody had to fire to create you don't just get bullet holes in the bottom of the boat. Someone is obviously there as well.
So, and that's who we assume is possibly coming back, which is perhaps Jack's people. That's what made me think. So you had mentioned you think Jack might be sort of a romantic character with Alicia. You don't think that we're just going to be dealing with some really dirty pirates and the first sort of real life people villains that this group's going to have to take down to survive? Do you think there's a chance that it's going to be trying to meld to mesh together two groups?
I think that's going to be the intention that's there. I think there's going to be some sort of conflict in some way in order to. It'll be like a peeing contest. It's going to be who's got the bigger balls here out at sea.
Got it.
It's going to be that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, I don't think they're going to go just straight out pirates with this, because I think that would be very much like they've done with the Saviors in The Walking Dead, and you don't want to just basically have that on water. You want to have some sort of different dynamic. So I think there is going to be something different that we haven't seen yet in these shows at play here. But also, we're calling them walkers. We should probably call them swimmers now.
Yeah.
Or floaters.
I mean, those are good.
The word zombie doesn't exist in this universe, which is it's like that's the weird detail of the Walking Dead universe where zombie the whole zombie lore is not something that was created before this.
Yeah.
So they referred to them as the dead. There's dead on land is what it was referred to in this one. So they haven't started calling walkers, I don't think.
Dead on Land would be the worst theme park ever, wouldn't it?
Or maybe even the most interesting. I don't know. I might want to go to that one.
When Nick came up with the book in the from the it kind of reminded me of that scene in Happy Gilmore when he like dives in to find his golf ball and he comes up and you're like who cares?
This is random. Get the heck out the water.
Yeah, you feel like
did he need to doodle? What was it? It's like,
I forgot my pen and paper. What's the problem? So we Strand seems to know how fast the boat can go. He's very zoned in on getting away from these people. So we're very worried about and the scenes from the future episodes looked awesome. Looks like there's gonna be some sort of conflict that happens very quickly. So to wrap things up, guys, I want to hit Carol Watch before we get into predictions. So if anybody wants to play along with us who's watching or listening and you want to tweet, use the hashtag FTWD Carol Watch. We're gonna run that the whole season. Hashtag FTWD Carol Watch. Who you think has the best shot of this cast becoming the next Carol? So let's go down the line one at a time. Simon, what do you think?
Okay, I've got two very different characters here. I think Alicia could be one very strong contender, but we haven't really seen that development with a male character yet.
Nope.
And I'm just wondering if that character is either going to be Salazar or is it going to be Strand?
Salazar and Strand are too much badasses already.
Yeah.
But I just think there's so much depth in those characters. I think they're so well written. We're seeing that already. Yeah. There's a lot of intelligence there that I think we're going to see a big. The characters that we know at the moment already, I think they're going to be very different by the end of this season and start of season 3.
So
there's going to be a lot of switching.
Who's your official vote? You get one this episode.
Oh, damn. Okay, this week I'm going to go with Alicia.
Okay. What do you got, Ashley?
I'm gonna go with Nick.
You're going Nick. Okay, I like
Only
that.
because
That's reasonable.
Because I see a lot of similarities between Nick and Carol.
Yeah.
They both have come from like abusive type situations. Like Nick obviously abuses drugs, so they were very attached. You know, like very dependent on people, on things. And so I see a lot of those similarities from the first couple of seasons of Carol and The Walking Dead. So I'm gonna go with that.
I'm so close to choosing Ophelia, but I'm going to choose Alicia. And Alicia, to me, they gave her a lot of screen time, and they really, in this episode, highlighted her mistake.
Yeah.
I think she's going to have to learn real quick, and I think she will. I think they're going to use her well in that way. But my second, and I may end up voting for her in another episode, is Ophelia. Mercedes Mason she's great, and I think she has a good shot at it. So
it would make sense. Like, give her something to do, please.
In the chat room, Travis or Nick. Nick is going to be the Michonne or Daryl. Alicia, big time.
Yep.
If it's a guy, I'd say Nick, but Alicia's my first choice. I like Nick too. Nick is an addict. His focus is on pills, not protecting others like Carol. Very interesting and very valid points there coming up in the chat. People feel really strongly about this.
Thank you, chat.
Yeah, excellent. Carol watch. Okay, and then last, guys, let's just go over any additional predictions we have before we sign off here. What do you guys think for next week, for the rest of the season?
Your AfterBuzz TV prediction.
I think that we're going to see... I think there's going to be a shift in the next couple of episodes with Strand. And I think we're going to find out very quickly what his priorities are.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to have to question those. So that... I think there's going to be a really big crisis of his own confidence in himself and what his true intentions are with Strand. He's the one for me right now.
I'm really interested to sort of see where Daniel, his progression with the show is. If he, and I kind of have this idea that maybe like he kind of wants to sort of take over and be sort of the Rick character of the group, and kind of so because of his past and because there's still a lot about him that we don't know about. So I'm kind of thinking that he's like, oh, I'm looking out, I'm watching, but it's just kind of so he can see an opportunity to monopolize on it and sort of take over in a sense. So I'm thinking that him and Strand are going to have some pretty cool scenes together as well.
They're pretty sweet and pretty badass already. I think they'll continue to be that way.
Yeah.
I am going to definitely just predict Chris is dead by the end of the season. That's my big prediction for the season. I think Chris bites it.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah, he just feels to me he's got that feeling, and I don't think they're going to invest a lot of time in developing him. I think some of the other young characters, they seem more easy to develop. But I could be wrong. That's my prediction.
Well, you were right about Liza last season, so I have to give it to you. You were literally dead on. Yeah.
Guys, where can the folks find you if they want to follow along before next week?
You can find me on Twitter at ShowbizSimon, also the same on Instagram, or you can find my Facebook page, This is Simon Thompson.
Hey guys, you can find me on Facebook, Ashley Chatman with a T, not a P, and then on Twitter, Ashley_Chatman. Thanks for watching.
Guys, I'm Ben Bateman. You can find me at Ben Bateman Media on Twitter and Instagram. I'll be tweeting about this all week, and I'll see you guys next Sunday. Thanks so much for tuning in. I can't wait.
See ya.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.